as a resource for other people who couldn't make it this evening. Another person joining. So yeah, I'll get started now. So welcome to Brighton Fringe Academy, how to market your event. As I said, my name's Rhiannon. Please pop any questions in the chat and I will have a look at them at the end. But yeah, let's get started. So firstly, I just wanted to cover what we'll be talking about today. So this is quite an entry level sort of fringe marketing workshop. It's, you know, difficult with fringe. Sometimes we have people who've been involved in fringe for many years, and they know exactly what they're doing. So this is quite sort of covering your bases, ideas about what is marketing, finding out what your objective is, and thinking a lot about what it is you want to get out of Brighton Fringe 2024. I'm going to talk a bit about finding your audience, how to market on a budget. So that's the sort of practical tips section, because obviously we are aware that budget is very limited for most people taking part in Brighton Fringe. A few tips about working with the press. It's not exhaustive, but it is a sort of base level bit of advice on how to talk to the press and how to communicate with the press. And it also can be applied to arts industry as well, so that all the information I'm going to give about press is also good advice to take on when talking to members of the arts industry. If you wanted to invite theatre bookers from London to come and see your show, it's sort of quite similar advice. Then we're going to talk about budget and timetable, when to do things, how to do things, how to split up sort of roles within your company, and then a bit of time to answer some questions, but it depends how long it takes me to get through the presentation, see how much time we've got left for questions at the end. But yeah, so first of all, just talk a bit about marketing. I'm sure you all know what marketing is, but it's always good to just touch base with that. So it's the action of promoting your show and selling tickets. It's the whole process. So it starts with identifying your audience, moving through setting targets, creating promotional materials, advertising, and then evaluating your results. So I'm just going to show you a great bit of Brighton Fringe marketing. This is by, I always show this in my presentations, this is by Simon David a few years ago. I think it's Brighton Fringe 2021. And for me, it really encapsulates his show. And it really is a great way to access, he's found a great way to approach his audience and catch his audience's attention. I hope this works and I hope you can hear it. So we will just, I'll press play and hopefully you can all hear it. And if not, when I follow up after the presentation, I'll send you all a link to it so you can watch it in case you can't hear it. I love this video just because I think it works really well for Simon David and the audience that he's trying to attract. He's looking for a younger audience who are interested in video content, so he's chosen the perfect medium. But I also think it gives a really good idea about his show, about how it is risque, it is distasteful, it is silly. So yeah, I think it encapsulates loads of things that you would want to know about his show before you've been to see it, or even really found out anything about what's happening in it, because it doesn't really give you any content, but it's just quite dry reviews of his show. So the first thing I want you to think about when taking part in Brighton Fringe is identifying your objective and what you want to get out of Brighton Fringe. You cannot do all of it. As much as people want to do all of it, they want to have a sellout show, they want to make a great profit, they want to gain exposure, they want to book touring dates around the country, they want to gain reviews and get great write-ups, they want to win awards, network with other artists and other venues. It isn't possible to do all of it. So what I really want you to think about is focusing in on one objective, because that objective will then explain to you what you need to do in every other aspect of your marketing. If your aim is to just get great reviews to go and do a run in Edinburgh in the summer, then you need to focus on that and that only. You may be able to pick a second sort of more junior objective, I would say. So something like expanding your network to go with getting reviews. So that would be, you know, networking with other people, going to events, networking events and chatting to people, going to workshops and that kind of stuff. But if it is, your aim is to sell as many tickets as possible and turn a good profit, that needs to be your primary goal. Obviously, things like reviews feed into that, because if you get a great review, you are more likely to sell some more tickets, but you need to think about what your number one objective is. So that's my first piece of advice. It's also really, really helpful to set some targets for yourself, especially if this is something you're planning on doing, you know, for the next few years at Brighton Fringe, or whether you're planning on taking this sort of on a tour of fringes around Buxton Fringe and Camden Fringe, or whether you are looking to book in for a tour in theatres. It's really, really good idea to start these good habits now and start looking at SMART objectives. So that is specific, measured, achievable, realistic, and timetabled. So obviously everybody wants people to come to their show, but saying I want everybody to come to my show is not the best objective or the best target. So what we would say is something along the lines of, I will sell to at least 50% capacity during my run. That would be a SMART objective, because then you can come back after your time at Brighton Fringe, you can review it and you can see if you achieve that goal. Whereas you need to put an amount to it. If you leave it loose, then you won't have anything to reflect upon. And a really, really big part of marketing is evaluating, seeing what you can do better next time and taking those lessons and doing something with them. So another great thing to do with your show before it happens is to do a SWOT analysis. I'm sure loads of you, if you work in an office environment or have done business at uni or college or something, will have seen it. It's a very simple exercise, and it's just a really good way to figure out what it is you are offering in your event or your show. So you're going to evaluate your competitive position. We already have 500, I think, and 99, maybe it might have ticked over just to 600 events registered for Brighton Fringe 2024. That is less than last year, but it's still a huge amount that you're sort of competing with. Not as big as Edinburgh or Adelaide or something like that, but it is something that you need to think about. And what are other people doing? What are other people offering? Is my ticket price right? All that kind of stuff. So the best way to lay out your SWOT analysis is to think about your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities that you might have in your show. Like, is your show quite sort of the moment? Is it concerning topics that are quite in the news at the moment and things like that? And your threats. So what are your threats? You know, is it that you have a limited marketing budget? Is it that you are doing a stand-up comedy show and 40% of the Brighton Fringe programme tends to be stand-up comedy, so therefore you've got a lot of competition? And just really have a think about what it is that you can offer and you can do differently. This is just a quick little sort of example that we've done for Brighton Fringe. So I'll just run you through this. So some of our strengths are that we're sort of largely an accessible festival. We have a good free and pay what you want programme, and our average ticket price was £9.38 last year. Compared to some of our competitors that happen in the city at the same time, for example, Brighton Festival, our ticket price is a lot more affordable for most people. So that is something that we believe is one of our strengths. We have a huge economic impact on the city, which is another one of our strengths. And we've got really great connections, great established charity and community partnerships, and really good partnerships with other sort of arts organisations in the area as well. Our weaknesses would be that we have a very small team. Since COVID, our team has sort of halved. We only have 3 members of full-time staff, so it's a lot of work for a small group of people. Another one of our weaknesses would be that we have an over-reliance on funding. We don't receive any public funding or regular funding, so we're always grafting to make sure that the festival happens every year. Some of the opportunities that we might have during May is the fact that other festivals take place during May. So we have the Great Escape, Brighton Festival, Artists Open Houses. This means that we have an opportunity with tourists. It's also when the weather starts getting nicer. There's lots of stag and hen do's coming down to Brighton. So we start to find these opportunities that we might be able to capitalise on. You know, other opportunities we might have are some of our international like collaborations and partnerships. For example, this year we're having the 2nd edition of the Pan-African Community Exchange at the Ironworks, and that's just a really brilliant way that we're sort of expanding our audience as a festival. So yeah, that's another great opportunity for us. Some of the threats, they're sort of quite similar to our weaknesses. So there's a lack of funding. There's a lack of funding in general across the arts scene, and we've been going through a really tough economic time as a country. Do people have lots of cash to spend on entertainment while they're sort of looking after themselves? So that's just an example of a SWOT analysis. It's just a really great way to think about your show, think about what it is you can offer people that might be different, and convince them to buy tickets to come and enjoy your show. Talking about finding your audience, this is really, really important. A lot of what I hear from artists is, I say, who do you want at your show? Who's coming to your show? Who's your audience? And they say, oh, it's for everyone. It's for anyone and everyone. And that's brilliant. And we love that open sort of ethos. And yes, of course, any show is for anyone. But the way you're going to sell tickets is to really start thinking about your audience and narrowing down who is coming to your shows. So if you've done a couple of sort of work in progress, and maybe during Brighton Fringe it's your first sort of full run of your show, or perhaps you've done some, if you're a comedian, you've done some mixed bills slots across the city previously, or wherever you're from, and you need to think about who was in that audience and what your show is about and who it's going to appeal to. The better you know your audience, the easier it is to convert to a sale, because you're going to find the people who would love your show and would be interested in your show. But when thinking about finding your audience, you've got to think about a few different things. So what's sort of their life stage? So where are they in their career? Are they in education? Do they have children? Perhaps they are students. Obviously, if you have a family orientated show, like a children's show, you want to be thinking about who are the parents in the area that you can convince to bring their children to your show. You're not going to be advertising to people really without children, because they're probably not going to buy your tickets. Live stage is also really important to consider when it comes to pricing, whether you're doing a free show, whether you're doing a pay what you want show. If the large section of your audience is going to be students, they're not going to part ways with much more than a £5 for a ticket, so you've got to think about, are you pricing it correctly for the people that you want at your show? We do, of course, have other shows that are very expensive, not very expensive, that's probably over the top, but quite expensive compared to the rest of our program, that are sort of, they might be sort of opera shows or classical music, and they are aimed at an older demographic who tend to have a bit more disposable income. So that brings me on to demographics. So are the people you're trying to attract to your show had previous arts exposure? Have they had lots of opportunities to participate in the arts? Again, thinking about that income and whether your ticket's priced right. Thinking about the way that you're communicating your show. If you are, for example, doing a show that is Arts Council funded, and you are trying to attract a certain audience in Brighton from certain areas to come to your show, you've got to think about the way that you're communicating with those audiences. You can't be using language that is very niche to the theatre world or something like that. You've got to use sort of plainer spoken English to explain to people why it's worth coming to your show, if they haven't had that exposure to that kind of world before. You've also got to think about people's attitudes, their values and their behaviours. This comes in really handy when thinking about trying to do sort of contra collaborations. That, for example, if my show was sort of an LGBTQ orientated show, I might approach one of the LGBTQ charities in the city, and I'd say either I'd be up for offering your staff a discount or free tickets if you featured me in your monthly newsletter to the people that use your services, because my show has themes that I think your audience will be interested in. So it's things like that. Or, you know, if your show is about, last year we had a great example. There was a show that was set in a fish and chip shop, and they went round to loads of the fish and chip shops in Brighton. They did some social content with them. They also just said, can we stick a poster up in your fish and chip shop, because our show is about a fish and chip shop, and we'll give you and your staff free tickets, or, you know, a couple of free tickets to come and see the show. So it's things like that, and thinking about what organisations in the city or in the area you might be able to sort of partner with in that way, because you share the same attitudes, values and behaviours. The final thing to think about with your audience is their geographical location. If you're not from Brighton and you need some sort of tips on if you know who your audience is and you want to know where you're going to find them, like where are you going to find young people aged 25 to 30 who are interested in X, Y, Z, or where am I going to find people who like opera? We can have a look. We have access to databases. We have, you know, old ticket information. We have old data that we can't necessarily share with you, but we can have a look at for you and make recommendations. For example, if you have a children's show, you know, you'd be looking at potentially, would you want to print some flyers and go and drop them through doors in Hanover or Hollingdean, where lots of families live? Or, you know, trying to think, or is your show the immediate vicinity around your venue? Is it worth trying to sort of drop some flyers in there, in the sort of streets around, saying, come to your local pub, I'll be performing in the downstairs? And, you know, you could even do like a cheaper discount for, like, if you live on these 3 streets, you can have £1 off or something like that. Also, when thinking about finding your audience, you're going to think about how you're going to sort of communicate with them. So there's 2 different ways you can do it. They both have their pros and cons. So you could do broad. So that would be your mass audience, trying to basically get your information about your show in front of as many people as possible. So, and it would be quite simple, generic messaging, as broad as possible, to try and capture as many people as possible. So this is the kind of stuff that Brighton Fringe as an organisation focuses on, because we have 600 shows to as part of the festival. We concentrate on trying to drive traffic into the city, trying to drive footfall to our box office. And so we're going for this sort of mass appeal, broad market. You know, we've got everything for everyone. You know, we've got cabaret, we've got kids shows, it's all here. So just come here and you'll have a great night out. That's the kind of thing that we as a festival focus on. So for you, it's probably better to focus on targeted marketing. So thinking about the individuals, thinking about that audience that you're trying to identify, and, you know, communicating messages in a way that they will receive. So examples of targeted marketing would be like sponsored ads on Facebook, targeted emails, and, you know, focusing in on that geographical area, either around your venue or where you think your audience is living. Pros and cons. So for the pros, broad marketing, you know, it's a wider mass appeal. There's a huge visibility on it, and it can make you seem bigger than you actually are. So, you know, if you took an advert out in the Argus next week, you might end up looking quite a lot more sort of established than you potentially are. because you've invested that money into sort of mass media. With targeted marketing, you do get a much higher rate of engagement. It's easier to track, and it will help inform your voice and how you're communicating with those people. But also it will help you inform future projects. You'll have better sort of findings, I think, after that. The cons for both. So broad, it can seem like you have vague messaging and it's difficult to track. Targeted marketing can seem quite niche. It potentially could seem exclusionary if you're aiming at a certain audience, and it can have a slower pickup rate, and more legwork is needed to do that, because you need to identify your audience, hone in on that, whereas broad is sort of paint strokes and just covering all bases and seeing what happens. So finally, before we move on to some sort of top tips of marketing, just again to think about defining your event. So your vision is the who, what, where, and why. So you've got to really think about who you are, what your show is about, communicating where it is, when it is, obviously very important, and why people should come to your show. Identifying your target audience. It is really key. I know we want everyone to come to our shows, but I really think the more you sort of tailor your marketing, the more effective it will be in the long run. And then, yeah, again, as I've mentioned, your pricing. It's so crucial for fringe shows to make sure the audience that you want can afford your show. Just a quick little bit about what we're doing this year. As I mentioned, we focus on that sort of broad mass appeal marketing as Brighton Fringe. We don't have a full brochure or an app this year. Again, we review this every year and we always look at how we can potentially make this happen. The compromise we have come to this year is we are printing a 10,000 copies of the family guide, which includes sort of family-friendly shows that were registered with Brighton Fringe before 4th of February, I think it was. And then we're also printing a digital inclusion listings booklet. The run of that booklet, it will look quite similar to the brochure, but it won't have things like a map in it. It won't have indexes, and it basically won't be 160 pages long, which is what the old brochure used to be. But we have only got enough budget to print a few thousand copies of those. So they're going to be available in our box office, the Brighton Fringe box office. And we're also going to do a drop to the libraries in the city as well. But there's only going to be a very limited amount available. These are aimed at people who need the sort of brochure to be able to figure out what's on and really struggle with computers. So when people come to the box office and say, can I have a brochure? We're going to say, we don't have a brochure, but we do have a digital inclusion listing guide. Do you struggle to browse shows on the website? If they say yes, then of course you can have one. If they say no, I just like to sit with a glass of wine and read it, we're going to politely decline, because we do know it's an issue for older people and people with disabilities accessing the festival. So that's why we're printing that this year. We've got a big out-of-home advertising campaign and bus campaign around the city. Our theme for this year is Find Your Fringe. So you might notice on your Eventatron registration, we asked you to sort of attribute your show to one of 6 characteristics. So find your funny, find your weird, find your story. So that's going to be the big billboard campaign happening around the city. We're actually using images of last year's shows on our billboards this year. We've always done cartoons previously, but we really wanted to centre the artists and the venues this year. And we think it will be a more effective campaign and less abstract as the artwork has been previously for Brighton Fringe. We've invested a huge amount of budget in social media advertising and digital advertising, and we're already starting to see the return on that. Ticket sales are up around 10 to 15% on last year already, which is really, really, really great to see, because Brighton Fringe does tend to be a late ticket buying audience. So we're really heartened to see that already. So that's exciting. We also have lots of marketing collaborations with external partners that are supporting us, and we have lots of sponsors and things this year that we're working with. And we're hopefully going to be producing a Fringe beer this year that will be available across the city. So that's another nice, exciting thing that we've got going. But that's a little bit about what we as an organisation are doing. Next, I just wanted to talk about really practical tips on how to market on a budget, basically. The first thing that we need to talk about is your show listing copy and your image. Your show, these are the most basic things to get right. Your image should be eye-catching, it should be relevant, it should be high quality, so not pixelated. And generally, I mean, I always find it funny. The first year I was at Fringe, there was a comedy show that had a very bad picture. It was just very bad quality. And I said to them, do you want to change your picture? And they said, no, that's the joke. So obviously, if that is the joke, then that is fine and you can keep it that way. But other than that, again, you are competing with over 600 other shows. You need your listing image to be as snappy and eye-catching as possible. We always say less text is good, just because on the website especially, and that's how the majority of people are buying their tickets these days, you know, the listing is surrounded by all the information about your show. It doesn't need to be on the image as well. Regarding your copy, so it's the easiest, the cheapest bit of marketing. You need to intrigue your audiences. You need to give enough way to make them realize that it's the show for them, but also leave them wanting to find out what happens in full show. It needs to be clear, concise. I always say just show it to friends and family and people you work with for feedback. Like, does this piece of writing make you want to come to this show? If they're your target audience as well. So if you know who your target audience is, showing it to a few of those people. Few jokes is great. And just, like, obviously if comedy, if it's a serious piece of theatre, you wouldn't do that. But yeah, it's free, and if you get it right, it's going to entice people to come to your show. If you want to review your image and listing copy after this, you can do, and we can make changes to it. It will only change online though. It won't change in any print that you might be involved in. Word of mouth. So word of mouth is obviously the cheapest way to market your event, but there are really good ways to generate word of mouth. So there's nothing people, I always say, nothing people from Brighton love more than A, being from Brighton, and B, being the first one to tell somebody about something. So it is a real word of mouth city. I'm sure if you've done any other fringes, if you've ever been to Edinburgh, you know how powerful word of mouth can be. You can start generating word of mouth about your show. The number one tip is to put on a good show. If your show is good, and even if you have 5 people in the audience on night 1, if your show is really, really good and really high quality, they will go out, they will text their friends, they will say, you have to go and see this, and the audience will grow night on night on night. This is why it's also so important not to cancel because of low numbers. Obviously, I understand why you might not want to go out on stage in front of 5 people, but if you can do it, please do it. We've all heard the stories from Edinburgh about someone performing to a room of 1 and a journalist overhearing and then tweeting it, and then they were sold out for the rest of their run. Obviously, can't guarantee that's going to happen every night, but if you do have those 5 people in, you thank them, you say, please tell your friends and families about my show if you enjoyed it. Those 5 people will go and do that for you, and you haven't spent a penny. Regardless of how many people you have in, always tell your audiences to tell their friends and family. Ask them to share on social media any pictures that they've taken and tag you. all that kind of things. If you can, mingling with your audience post-show is great. If you can go out into the bar area and talk to people, ask for feedback, did they enjoy it? That's a great way to generate word of mouth. Share ticket buyer reviews, testimonials on social. When you are mingling with people after your show, say, can you say a few words and I'll film you about my show and I can share it, that kind of thing. This is why reviews are on everything. Google reviews, TripAdvisor. People love to read reviews and understand reviews. It doesn't matter whether it's from The Guardian or some someone who's just been to your show. If you can put a nice little video together and share that, that's wonderful. Publicity stunts are a great way of generating word of mouth. That's how a lot of people do generate word of mouth, to market things throughout the world. They can be risky if they don't pay off, if something goes wrong, if you get in trouble, might not be worth it. But a really lovely publicity stunt that happened at Brighton Fringe, I think it was 2019, was some members of a circus took some puppets that were part of their show out round the streets of Brighton, round the lanes, and sort of did impromptu sort of street performances. And they had a couple of members of the company also handing out flyers. That was brilliant. Also last year there was a band that performed as part of Fringe, a brass band, and they went out and did a sort of a route round the lanes as well, playing their brass instruments with someone handing out flyers at the same time. So if you have that kind of thing, like as part of your company, as part of your event, that's really brilliant. But don't do anything too risky, because otherwise I might get in trouble as well. So I don't want you to do that. Networking with other participants is really important. Coming to the Artist Hub, which is where we will be based during Brighton Fringe, at the Ledwood Centre on Jubilee Street. Coming there, we do coffee mornings on Wednesday mornings. We're also going to be doing some slightly late night, not late night, but sort of an evening drinks at the North Lane pub as well. So coming there, talking to people about your show, finding people with similar shows to you and similar audiences, and saying, if I shout out your show at the end of my show, will you shout out mine? Or can I come and exit flyer from your show and you can come and exit flyer from mine? Or, I can give you a wodge of flyers to stick on your seats at the beginning of your show. Can you do the same? Like, I'll do the same for you. All that kind of stuff. Making friends, supporting each other is a great and cheap, effective way to do it. Number one top tip, our old marketing assistant, this was always his number one top tip because he used to work in the box office. Go to the box office and tell the box office about your show. Bribery is always a good option with some biscuits or something like that. These are the people, only about 10% of our sales goes through the counter on the box office, but the people who do go to the box office are the people who are struggling to pick a lot of the time. So if you've gone to the box office and told them all about your show and said, my show covers these topics, if you talk to, or like, my show is a family show, if you see any families today, could you please tell them about my show? All that kind of stuff. And they can be big advocates for you to encourage the more people who know about your show. Someone might say, I'm looking for this, like a really weird, surreal alternative comedy show. And you go, oh, someone was telling me about a show like that the other day. Go to this, like that kind of thing. So it's really important just to make sure as many people know about your show as possible. And then connecting with local press and influencers and inviting them to your show. A lot of press will browse our press portal and just book what they want, but it's always good to send them a little email and tell them about your show as well. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute as well. Social media, it's free to use, like all social media, all the main social medias available: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc. Please use our hashtags, Brighton Fringe and Find Your Fringe. Tag us. We will try and share your content. If you tag us on Twitter, we will pretty much reshare everything. Instagram and Facebook, it does get a bit more complicated because the more we share, the less engagement we get. So we cannot share every single story that we get tagged in. We get tagged in 300 to 400 stories a day during the Fringe. So you know, if you are really struggling, do feel free to send us a message and just say, please, can you reshare this? And the marketing team will try their best to, but it's not a guarantee, I'm afraid. With social media, what I always recommend is building a schedule, making someone responsible for it in your company. What are you going to post and when? You can preload content, so you can start scheduling it. You can actually do this on Facebook now as well directly. You know, you could do a meet the cast series of social media posts, so talking about who's in your show, meet the producer, meet the director, you know, you preparing sets, or you preparing marketing materials, even designing your posters, all this kind of stuff. And you know, TikTok is a really brilliant platform if you're into social media. It's because you have the ability to go viral more easily than other platforms. It's not easy, but you know, if you use hashtags Brighton Fringe, Brighton, all those kinds of things, a lot of people might see your content. But it is time consuming, and this is why I always recommend asking one people to be responsible for this content, one person being responsible for running around the audience after the show and saying, would you mind talking to camera for 10 seconds to say what you thought was good about our show, and then you can share that straight away. You can schedule content and think of those ideas so that it's steady and it keeps coming, but the best content is real-time content, so it will make you stand out from the rest. Things like, we're getting ready, we're doing our dress rehearsal and posting that live, that's always the best kind of content. Also, the algorithm on socials prefers real-time content to scheduled content. You won't get as much traction with scheduled content, but it is good to get into that rhythm of sharing social media. Networking, I've kind of already discussed this. So yeah, networking with other people's shows, trying to get people with similar audiences to do little swaps with you, contacting local organisations that share the values that your show is, you know, about, and trying to collaborate on marketing. People always wonder about the Ladyboys of Bangkok and how they get absolutely everywhere with their posters. Their tactic is they go in and they give out free tickets to staff if in exchange for putting a poster up. It's a great way to do it. If you wanted to do a discount code, you don't have to give away loads of free tickets. But you know, if your show was about, I don't know, I'm trying to think about something, or a community kitchen, for example, you go to a couple of the community kitchens in Brighton and say, for your staff and your volunteers, you get 10% off tickets, that kind of thing. Also, please check in with your venue and ask what marketing support they are offering. A lot of them will display your posters, you just need to send them to them. But remember, some venues will be hosting over like 100 events potentially. You need to advocate for yourself and say, what can I have? What is included in the package? Go back, look at your contract or your agreement with the venue and look, have I delivered everything they've asked for? Have, you know, they've asked for A4 posters to put up in their venue. Have I given it to them? What else are they doing? Is there an opportunity to be in a venue specific brochure? Is there, you know, what opportunities are there? You need to find out, you need to make sure you've completed them, because it will be sad if you're not from Brighton, you turn up at the venue, you know, the day before your show starts and there's posters for Fringe events everywhere and yours isn't there. So please make sure you check in with your venue, clarify what they're willing to offer, what they're going to support you with. Maybe they'll throw you in a monthly mailer to their, you know, their previous customers, that kind of thing. Just make sure you know what they're offering and that you've delivered your side of things. Ticketing, I've spoken quite a bit about discounts and things like that, but I just wanted to talk about these. Friends of Fringe, this is for our membership scheme. We do 2-for-1 tickets for our friends. You do not have to opt in every day. You can opt in for specific days. This is another good bit of advice, because you want to opt in on opening night, and say your run is from Friday to Tuesday, you might want to opt in for Monday and Tuesday night as well, because those will be quieter nights and a harder sell because it's not at the weekend. So it's things like that to make sure you try and maximize those strategies. If you want to offer it every night, great, that's perfect, but you've got to think about your budget and your revenue. Pay what you want tickets. I'm sure a lot of you know this already, but we do offer the pay what you want structure. You can set the minimum that people can pay, so you can set it as a £5, and they will always be able to pay up to £30. That's just a way to make your event more accessible. Basically, the idea is if you're earning a bit more money, you can pay a bit more. If you're not earning very much money, you can pay a bit less. Promo codes and special tickets, you just need to talk to our box office team. So you can set up promo codes, so that could be a 10% off or a 2-for-1, or you could set up special tickets depending on what you want. We had a really interesting show last year that was about debt and the inequality of home ownership. So they actually completely got rid of general tickets and concession tickets, and their tickets were based on a structure of home ownership. So if you were a landlord, you had to pay the most. Then it will work down to if you were a homeowner, you earned slightly less. If you were a renter, you earned slightly less. If you lived in social housing, you paid slightly less. So we can do all sorts of things like that. So if you're interested in setting up something for a specific community, specific group of people, or a specific audience, we can set those up. You just need to have a chat with the box office and we'll see how we can work it. You know, you might come with an idea and we have to tweak it slightly, but we can definitely discuss whatever you want to do. It's also a great idea. You can opt into large ticket discounts. Again, if your show is like a late night Saturday night cabaret show or circus or comedy, thinking about those parties, work parties, you know, birthday parties, stag do's, hen do's, and trying to maximize on things like that with a group discount is a great idea too. Print. Okay, so we obviously offer some print options through Brighton Fringe. The deadline was today. We've got a couple of pieces left available. I think we've got some A3 Toblerone posters left, maybe a couple of A0s, which I've left open at the moment, see if anyone wants them, but they will close in the next day or two. We will potentially have more print advertising come up in the coming weeks. One of the outdoor venues has asked us to help them with the perimeter fence around their venue, and that would be available to all Fringe participants and artists. But yeah, it's really great. You can use local distribution companies. The cheapest one that I'm aware of is Swap Marketing. They have clip frames in pubs, cafes, everything across the city, and they're a really good way to get sort of 100 posters printed and displayed across the city. Also, Ground Up Media are a great option. You can also try going into pubs and bars and cafes yourself. Arrive in the city a couple of days early, or if you're from the city, go and ask your local pub, can I put my poster up here? Again, you can offer them a ticket discount, or, you know, it's things like that, and just have a bit of a chat with them and see what they can do for you. Always make sure you use QR code on your poster so people can scan it and buy. QR codes, you know, they're not having the moment that they were in you know, 2020 in the pandemic, but they are still a really helpful tool, and a lot of older people actually got used to them during the pandemic, and they use them as quite a quick and easy way to purchase a ticket. I'm going to have a sip of water because I'm now going to talk to you about flyering. Flyering has changed this year at Brighton Fringe, so it's quite convoluted, so I'm going to explain it. So previously, with flyering, all you needed was a Brighton Fringe logo on your flyer, and then that was considered your flyering license. That is no longer the case. Brighton and Hove City Council are, like lots of councils across the country, in a difficult financial position and are trying to monetize all areas of the city, basically. They tried to revoke Brighton Fringe's the ability for Brighton Fringe artists to flyer, because in the city centre of Brighton there has always been a flyering ban. It's just they made an exception for us and for other businesses if they paid to do so. We argued with the council for 4 months on this basis. Our argument being that grassroots artists, theatre makers, comedians are not the people that need to be paying for flyering licenses, and perhaps they should be going to sort of bigger national organisations that are based in the city and restaurants and fining them for, you know, littering and things like that. So we managed to talk them down from a compromise, but it is quite a convoluted compromise. So this is the map of Brighton. The greyed out area is the area that you need to have a flyering licence to flyer. If you are wanting to flyer outside of that area, so up towards Queen's Park, up towards Round Hill and London Road Station, or over into Hove, you can flyer happily without a flyering licence. If you want to flyer within the greyed out area, it gets more complicated. So in this red area, you as a Brighton Fringe artist or venue are allowed to flyer between the hours of 12 and 8 p.m. So it is Jubilee Street, New Road, round to Valley Gardens, basically. So it's very city centre areas. It's frustrating for us. So you're allowed to flyer there between 12 and 8 as long as you have your Brighton Fringe logo. If you want to flyer outside of that time or that area, but within the greyed out area, we will have flyering licenses in our artist hub at the Ledwood Centre on Jubilee Street that you can come and collect. We are buying them for artists to use, so there will be a limited amount. It'll be based on first come first served basis, and you will need to leave a deposit. These flyering licenses are worth a couple of £100, so we will need you to leave either a debit card or, you know, a driving license or something that you will come back for, basically. You are welcome to take them overnight, but you will not get your item back until you have returned them. The items will be secure in our artist hub in a safe. You also, if there's 3 of you and you come and collect a flyering license and there is only 1 left, that only one of you will be able to physically hand out flyers because you have to be wearing it. It has to be around your neck. The other 2 will not be able to hand out flyers because they are not wearing one. If anyone has any issues or hears of any issues of anyone being fined by enforcement officers in the city, please contact us as soon as possible, and also tell people to contact us. We can't do anything about it unless we know about it, and if we know about it, we can put pressure on the council to rescind fines. It has worked in the past, it will hopefully work again. So just please make sure you and people you know that if you get in any trouble with an enforcement officer, please come to us first and we will help. But yeah, to reiterate, red line 12 till 8. Outside of that, come to the artist hub and see us. It's very convoluted. I hope it's not too confusing for everyone. Another cheap and cheerful way to advertise your show is listings. So creating events on Facebook, adding Brighton Fringe as co-host, uploading your listings to Visit Brighton, What's on Brighton, XYZ Brighton, and the Argus. I think the Argus might be paid for now, but the rest of them are all free options. Visit Brighton is especially a great place to list your event because it is the #1 place that tourists will look when they come down to Brighton. They'll go on there. It's the tourist board website, so that's the best one. Obviously, if you have a family show, there are lots of other people who do listings, sort of family magazines, so Family Grapevine, Rainbow Families, ABC Sussex, that kind of thing. Elevator pitches. These are a great way to advertise your show. Obviously, it doesn't work for all shows. It doesn't work for all sort of designs of shows. There's lots of pick of the fringes across the fringe. We're actually going to do a call out next week to ask people to tell us if they're interested in performing at pick of the fringes. There's ones. Laughing Horse hosts some. Headfirst Acrobats will be hosting some in their new outdoor venue that's by St Peter's Church. And there's quite a lot of the sort of local pubs want to do pick of the fringes. Again, mixed bill lineup, same format. You basically will get up and do 10 minutes of your show. At the end, just say, I'm performing the whole hour as part of Brighton Fringe next week at this place on this date. Please come and see me. It's just a way of advertising to another pretty captive audience. If you're a comedian and you're not from Brighton, I would recommend looking at Brighton Comedy Folk, which is a Facebook group. They have a spreadsheet on there with all the sort of mixed bill nights available across the city with contacts. So you can just contact people and say, hi, I'm in Brighton between X of May and the other date. And I'd like to perform. Can I do 10 minutes with you? That kind of thing. Pick of the Fringes are great because they tend to be more variety rather than just straight up comedy. But yeah, there will be some of those available. This is sort of the last big section of the presentation. So this is about working with the press and just keeping some, obviously, a lot of people find this very intimidating because they've never done it before. Please don't, and please keep it simple. So basically, these are my tips. So press releases. Press releases are great, and it's good to draft one, and it's great practice to draft one, especially if this is the first time you've done a fringe. I would argue that the most important thing is the email that the press release that precedes the press release. So you want to grab someone's attention. You want to explain to them why specifically you have chosen to send the press release to them. The press release can be short. All it needs is an image, who you are, what your show is about, where your show is, and if there's anything special to talk about, and contact details. Make sure any image that you used is of good quality. Please don't send journalists pixelated images. Please don't send journalists press releases with spelling mistakes in, because it will just instant turn off. They will be getting loads of press releases during Brighton Fringe. They'll be getting press releases from the festival. They'll be getting press releases from the Great Escape. They'll be getting press releases from fringe artists. Journalists in Brighton are so busy during May, and the smallest little thing will just make them go. So just please make sure you get it right. If you're using things like celebrity names and endorsements, please make sure they are true. We have had issues with this in the past. And aim for your publicity material to reach journalists a few weeks out from your show. I would always recommend sending out a feeler email first, saying, hello, I'm so-and-so, my show is about this, and I think you'd be really interested in this because I read your article about this. It's really important to do your research on journalists and try and find out why they might be interested in coming to your show. There is no point just sending out a blanket email to 200 emails. You won't get a response. You need to tailor it, and you need to make sure you're approaching quality people with quality explanation about why your work is relevant to them, and why, if it's not relevant to them personally, why it's relevant to their readership. It is so important, and that is the way you will get people. Don't attach large files. Oh, sorry, what I was going to say is send a pre-email sort of several weeks out. So now, and then follow up later with a press release, even if you haven't heard from them. It is not an issue if you haven't heard from them. Obviously, do not bombard them, but they're busy people. They're probably, you know, a lot of press nowadays are doing it part-time. It's not their full-time job, or they're working for multiple publications at the same time. So they are, you know, very busy people, and it is better to jog their memory politely a few weeks later and say, hi, I sent you an email, don't know whether you got a chance to look over it, but here's my full press release attached. Press release should be no longer than a few paragraphs. Does not need to be any longer than 1 page at an absolute maximum. It should be short and sweet. Image wise, yeah, don't use really large emails and don't attach them. If you're going to use images, I would recommend putting them into the body of the email. If they're too big, they might clog up somebody's inbox. And yeah, they just need to be good quality, but you don't want to be clogging up their inbox. Don't go over the top with your adjectives or about your show. So things like sensational, hilarious, brilliant, unless they are a specific quote from a publication. Otherwise, just, yeah, use over the top language sparingly. Obviously, if someone wrote you a review and it's, you know, the best show I've ever seen by The Guardian, from The Guardian, do put that front and center. But if it's you describing your own work, please make sure you don't go too over the top, and don't panic about the media. That's my main tip. It is important, but it's not the be all and end all. And don't harass them, as I said, on Twitter or you know, on email. It is important, but there is multiple different ways you can look at the press. My main thing would be deciding whether you want to attract press to gain reviews that you might be wanting to use on a tour or at later fringes, and whether you want that from a theatre reviewer, so someone like Fringe Review or like Theatreland. Do you want reviews with stars, or do you want previews and write-ups that are more about encouraging ticket sales directly? So there's publications like BN1 magazine in Brighton, Brighton on the Inside, G Scene is a big LGBTQ plus magazine down here, and they're all great at doing not just reviews but also previews and covering shows and posting about your show on their Facebook page, for example, prior to your show happening. So think about whether you want to use the press as a marketing exercise or as a sort of review exercise. Is a good thing to think about. So as I said, top tips, always try and make it personal, why you want them personally to come. We have a template on our website. Make sure you include any links that your show has to sort of current zeitgeisty topics. You know, everybody's talking in the news about X, and my show features these themes through this. Journalists quite a lot of the time are operating on trying to secure more advertisers. So the more that they can get people to click on their review of your show because it shares a relevant theme to the current zeitgeist, the more they're going to be encouraged to come and see your show. So you've got to think about it like that. They're not going to come and see your show just because your show's really good. They're going to come and see your show because it will also potentially help them in some way. Include some brief quotes. So if you've got any, they're always great to throw in. Include social media so they can have a little peruse. If you've got social media and you use it, if you don't really use it, don't bother including it. And just please don't leave out any of the important information like ticket prices, running time, box office details, etc. Members of the press get accredited with us so they can book their own tickets and administrate their own tickets. And it also allows us to sort of like quality check. So people apply for accreditation, we have a look at them and we decide, you know, are you doing this because you just want some free tickets to a cabaret show on a Saturday night, or are you doing this because you are a legitimate journalist and you review things? So if you come across any journalists who say, yeah, I'd love to come to your show, but I'm not accredited, that is fine. If you are happy for them to come, please just shoot either take part at brightonfringe.org or box office at brightonfringe.org an email and say, I want to give a ticket to this person, and we will do it for you. You can also administrate those tickets yourself. If you go into the dates, times and prices section of your event registration, where you can check your ticket sales, you can expand the details section, and once you've expanded it, you'll see a button that says issue comp or reservation. You put in their email, you press issue comp, and it will send them the ticket, and it will come out of your allocation. So you can do it, you can ask us to do it, they can get accredited and do it themselves. Anyway, we are happy to facilitate. Just give us a shout if you need any help with it. Targeting your media, already spoken about this. If you are reusing the same email on multiple people and you want to send it all at once, please make sure you'll be CCing it. I'm sure lots of you work in offices and you know this, but it's also a GDPR violation. So please make sure that you're not sharing people's details with people that haven't consented to have their details shared with you. You can find our press list in Eventatron in the arts, industry and press section of your registration. So there are 2 spreadsheets. They are live spreadsheets, so they will be added to every week of more people who signed up and consented to have their details shared on that document. But yeah, that's where you can find that sort of contacts. And if you want any advice with people who on who to contact, please again shoot us an email and tell us a bit about your show, and we can make recommendations. And try not to send your press release to like 10 people at the local paper. Pick 1 or 2 because they are the entertainment and arts correspondents. You don't need to send it to the sports journalist. Budget and timetable. It's always really important to create a budget and stick to it. We have a budget calculator where you can model ticket sales on our website. It's so important. Just please be realistic. You are not going to necessarily sell out every single night. You know, I'd love you to, but we've got to set our expectations. So, you know, I always suggest modeling at 50% capacity because that is a great achievement. So make sure you know what your marketing budget is and stick to it. Don't start panicking sort of 2 days out and suddenly drop, you know, another 100 quid on something you don't need to. It is eating into your profit. You know, just stick to your guns. If you've made a plan, execute it. If it doesn't go perfectly this time, review it and look at what happened, what went wrong, and then take that as a learning onto your next thing. Once you've decided on your amount, collect quotes, you know, go and find out how much things cost. Online printers these days are so cheap, especially for flyers. So have a look at those. There's places like Solo Press, there's all sorts of places, and they'll deliver to you within 2 days. So it's ideal. If you want something bigger, you know, if you want something more creative, check out Gemini Print. They're our print partner, and they will do, if you tell them that you are a Brighton Fringe artist, they will do 10% off for you. Yeah, make sure you've got your quotes, you've figured out what's essential, give yourself a bit of a leeway, so maybe you save like 30 quid at the end for emergencies, and then carry out your plan. Think about all the sort of cheap options that we've talked about today, and think about how you can bring those into your plan and try and do them as cheap. Timetable wise, if you've got an event that has 4 members of the cast and a director, split the jobs between people, play to people's strengths. Obviously, if you are a one-person show or a stand-up comedian, this is more difficult, but the more organized you are, the better it will be. So write out what's happening when, make a spreadsheet, use a project management board like Monday or Asana, or just spreadsheet is fine, and just make sure you know who's doing what when, and also make sure there's somebody who is reviewing that spreadsheet every fortnight, say between now and May, and saying, hey, have you done this yet? No, I haven't. Can you do it, please? It's boring, but this is how things get done. Evaluation. After your event has happened, it's great to look at it. You can take so many learnings onto your next project. We can help with ticket data. People can opt in to be contacted by you personally when they buy tickets. So if you want that data, please ask us for it, because they have consented to that data. They will share it. We can look at things for you like postcode analysis. We can tell you where people lived who came to your show. You know, then you can look at that for if you come back to Brighton Fringe next year, you can say, I know 80% of my ticket buyers lived in the St. Peter's and North Lane area, so I'm going to focus my marketing on there. That kind of thing. So yeah, please make sure you evaluate and think about how you can take things forward. I also really wanted to quickly talk about the artist services team. So we're contactable on the take part at brightonfringe.org, email at any time. You can contact me directly. My personal email is there if you want. I'll try my best to get back to you, but there's all three of us on the take part email, so that's the best place to contact us, and we will do our best to help you. You can also call us between 9 and 5. The only thing is we will be closed this Wednesday for an away day, but I will generally put in our out of office if the department's going to be closed for any reason. Yeah, I just want to say that we're a small, friendly team. We'll do our best to help you. And please come and see us at the Artist Hub when that opens in May as well at the Ledwood Centre, and we'll try our best to get you a cup of tea and a biscuit if you're not feeling very excited about your ticket sales. But yeah, I'll have a look in the chat now and try and answer a few questions. So if you've got any more questions that you've been thinking about, please put them in now and I'll work my way through them. So are artists able to track ticket sales via Eventatron or some other method / portal? Yes, if you go onto Eventatron, go onto your event registration and click on the dates, times and prices section. If you're on a computer, it'll be on the left hand side, there'll be the Brighton Fringe logo. Underneath it will say your venue, and then underneath that it will say dates, times and prices. Click on there. And you'll be able to see how many tickets you've sold out of your allocation. And you'll also be able to see an estimated, please know it is estimated, amount of revenue that you personally are taking. This obviously hasn't factored in things like PPL, PRS deduction, so it's not the final amount, but it gives you an idea. I will say if you have oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. If your venue is also selling tickets, so you're not selling all your tickets through Brighton Fringe. So for example, the Lantern Theatre, they sell 70% of their tickets through their box office and 30% through our box office. Through Eventatron, you will only be able to see our tickets, the Brighton Fringe tickets. So if you have a venue where your tickets being sold in different places, you will need to also contact them. Mark, how can you work front of house this year? Yeah, I'm sure it did open up loads of opportunities about your show. Brighton Fringe aren't running any venues, so we're not organising any front of house team. So the best bet would either to be contact a couple of the venues directly, but I can supply you with some contacts, because there is for example, Headfirst Acrobats are bringing a new venue, so they might be looking for front of house teams, but we are not running any venues ourselves, so I can't help directly with that. But yeah. Yeah, the enforcement officers. So Mark has written enforcement officers for flyering licenses. Yeah, that is correct. They I don't know if anyone lives in Brighton recently, but they are hot on the parking tickets at the moment. So yeah, they are sending out enforcement officers for flyering licenses. So please, if anyone gets fined, tell us. Vicky and Joe, I'm glad you found it helpful. And Cloud, thank you very much. And Maria, thank you very much. Sally, thank you very much. Carol, thank you very much. Okay. Richard, the lights, camera, action, creating a trailer workshop a few months ago. You found it useful, but you can't find the recording. My colleague Maddie ran that workshop, so I will ask them. I thought they'd upload it onto the website, but maybe they haven't, so now they're in trouble. They're not in trouble, but I will ask them about it tomorrow, and I can always, I will find your email address on Eventron and I will send it to you if we have it. If not, I will ask them to share the slides with you, and so that you have at least all the information. Thank you, Alice. Your show combines poetry and music, so it's under cabaret as the most appropriate category, but is it possible to have it signposted from spoken word as well as it crosses boundaries? I will have to check with our box office manager, because he does all the sort of, he designs all the filters and things on the website. Sorry, this is my technical knowledge coming through. So yeah, I can talk to him. What I'll do is I'll save this chat, and any of these queries that I can't answer now, I will follow up with tomorrow. So I can, again, I'll get your email off of Eventron and I can loop you in with him to see if there's anything he can do. Mark, I'm glad you found it helpful. Thank you, Jade, and thank you, Alice. Sorry for the sort of the one-way traffic of the workshop, but I'm very glad that you all found it very helpful. And again, please, the thing I always say about Brighton Fringe, I think there's a misconception that there's this big team behind it and there's lots going on, and there is lots going on, but there's not many people here. So we can only help if we know about things, you know, going wrong or whatever. So if you're not having a great time, please, you know, come and see us in the Artist Hub, and we can have a cup of tea. And, you know, if you do want any more tips or you want specific press people to contact, just shoot us an email. It might take us a couple of days to come back to you, because it is getting, our inbox is getting very busy at the moment, but we will come back to you. So yeah, but as long as everybody is happy, I will probably just end this Zoom and I'll end the recording. We'll upload this in a couple of days, and I will follow up with everyone about the things that we've not been able to answer today, and I'll download the chat and make sure that I've gone through all the questions. But yeah, lovely to speak to you all, and I really hope that you have a wonderful Brighton Fringe, and we'll hopefully meet you all in real life soon. So yeah, thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody.